Good afternoon. I'm Mayor Muriel Bowser. We are at the Deanwood Recreation Center in Ward 7. I'm joined by members of our public safety team to provide a public safety briefing and to take on-topic questions. I'm here. I know many of our residents are very concerned about news reports that we've heard, especially today, about violence in the district. We are also troubled by violent incidents that we've seen around the country, where violence and guns marred a holiday weekend. So we want to make sure that we are sending the clear message that our public safety apparatus and our team are working around the clock to keep district residents safe. And we want to make sure that we are using all of our tools to investigate these violent incidents and to hold the people responsible accountable. I'm asking the acting chief of police, Leslie Parsons, who is acting for Ashan these few days, to provide a briefing on some of these incidents, and then we'll be able to take your questions. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Assistant Chief Leslie Parsons of MPD's Investigative Services Bureau. As you all know, the 4th of July brings thousands of visitors to our nation's capital, and each year, MPD is fully activated to be present in and respond to community needs, as well as facilitate the many events around our city. Yesterday and into the overnight hours, we experienced a number of shootings and homicide, and that is totally unacceptable. And while we should acknowledge there were many events to include multiple neighborhood parades, Major League Baseball game, a concert and fireworks display that went off without incident, the gun violence that occurred in the evening cannot be ignored, and we are asking our community for help. I'm going to briefly speak on two cases that occurred last night and this morning. The first case I'll start on is the case from Meade Street that occurred just before 1 a.m. this morning, the 4700 block of Meade Street Northeast. In this case, there were several residents of our community outside celebrating the 4th of July when a vehicle that is described as a dark-colored SUV sped through the block, stopped, and suspects recklessly discharged firearms at these residents. That vehicle then fled the scene. As a result, we ended up with 9 total victims. Initial reports where our youngest victim was 9 years old. That victim is actually 10 years old. So we had a 10-year-old victim and a 17-year-old victim. Everyone is expected to survive. Nobody has any life-threatening injuries. They are all being treated at local hospitals. The next case that I was going to speak on, just to give you a briefing and update about, is the case from Catholic University that I know everybody has questions on. So right around 8 a.m. this morning, 4th District officers responded to the 600 block of Alumni Lane, which is the address on Catholic's campus. Now, this occurred just off Michigan Avenue, just on the campus, but it was outside. In this case, they responded. They located an adult male shooting victim. DC Fire and EMS responded, transported that victim to a local hospital where he unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. Although very, very preliminary in this investigation, the investigation so far suggests that the victim and suspect were known to each other, and it appears that whatever transpired between two individuals that knew each other. We'll have more updates on that case later. Unfortunately, that's all I have on that one at the moment. But I'd like to encourage anybody that has any information on any of these cases or any other cases to please contact the Metropolitan Police Department. Call our 24-hour command center at 202-727-9099, or you can send us a text tip at 50411.
Thank you. And I know there were also some questions about our non-law enforcement deployments across the city, and I wanted to ask the city administrator just to comment briefly on that.
Thank you, Mayor. So for large events like the 4th of July, we deploy something called Go Teams throughout the city. Last night, there were 28 GO teams that had over 100 individuals involved. And those GO teams have a few missions. One is to be present and provide a safe space for individuals. These are often individuals who are known to community, who grew up in community, that are assigned to each GO team. Second, to walk the adjacent blocks to be able to observe rising tensions, keep things safe, encourage people to have fun. And third, if they do spot rising tension, that's not even yet at the point where there would be a crime, to notify their chain of command, who notifies MPD, so they can adjust their deployment. So we had 28 present yesterday, about 100 individuals. In the past, we've been at prior 4th of Julys. We've been out at Halloween. These consistently show they reduce violence in the area. They cannot control for or stop every instance of violence, but they do have a calming effect on community. I had a chance to visit about 5 GO teams last night between 9 and 11, all actively walking the adjacent blocks and engaging with community.
Questions?
I have a question about Mead Street.
Yes, Darcy.
Regarding the mass shooting incident. So we spoke to someone who lives there. She indicated that she has a party every year, a peaceful party, food. They set off fireworks, things like that. So if you could confirm what was going on in that area. I saw on Twitter you said that this was targeted. If you could kind of explain, I mean, were the children targeted? Like, who exactly was targeted? And was there police presence in that area?
Yeah, so as I mentioned during the summary of the case, it appears that this vehicle came down the street in a split second and fired shots recklessly towards the folks that were outside. We're still investigating the case, so it's hard for me to give you a firm answer on your question, but it appears the folks that were outside merely celebrating the 4th of July were targeted, and we're trying to figure out why.
Are you going to put anything out on the vehicle?
We're working on that. If we're able to develop whatever we can develop in this case, we'll definitely share it with the public.
Chief, I'm Catholic. Can you tell us anything about the victim? Did the victim have any connection to the university whatsoever?
Yeah. So far, as I said, very preliminary in the investigation, but so far we're not seeing a connection to the victim and the university.
Or to, I know the Marionberry Leadership Institute also meets on campus and was meeting there. Was he connected to that?
There's nothing to suggest any connection there at all. And unfortunately, I can't comment any more on the victim as we're still working to positively ID and notify next of kin.
Mayor Bowser, can I just ask you, the numbers are staggering. Since you held your press conference on Thursday talking about trying to keep a lid on violence over the weekend, since Friday, there have been 10 murders by my count. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 10 murders since Friday, 5 in the last 24 hours. What do you make of that? What do you say to residents that, I know it's a nationwide problem, it's not unique to Washington, D.C. that there's gun violence, but 10 murders in 5 days?
We have too many guns and too many violent people on the street. And we all need to do everything possible to prevent people who have guns from using them in our city. What we talked about, I'm sure, on Thursday was how we were going to deploy our resources. I just got a briefing from the team that our police response was in the margin of what we expect for priority calls, that our fire response was in the margin, that our large-scale events in the city came off with relatively few hitches. So we know that our public safety team is working double time to keep our city safe. We need the rest of the apparatus to also be working that way. I know you also covered the council's hearing on my Safer, Stronger legislation. I continue to ask the council to act with urgency, not to water down the bill, and make sure that they're doing what the United States Attorney, what the police have asked them to do, to give the judges the discretion to hold violent people who have committed another violent crime in our city. We think that's a low bar, and we think it has to happen now, and it has to happen before they go on recess. Yes.
To the violence that happened, this entire extended 4th of July holiday, we've heard from community members in other shootings that have asked for the National Guard to be requested. We know that police are short-staffed. We know that MPD is working double time here. Was there ever any requests made to call in more resources? And then separately, with regard to all of the safe events that happen in D.C., how do you respond to the residents who feel that if they're not in the downtown area or a big event with lots of police, that it's like good luck to them? They're on their own.
No one's ever on their own. As I mentioned already about, and the way that I can respond to you about how our neighborhoods were protected is just looking at how long it takes police to get to a call. And those responses met my expectation. I think I lost the other part of your question.
Can we go back to, was there ever a request made to
There's
call
not, no, there
National
wasn't.
Guard?
I think, as you know, Stephanie, if we need the National Guard to help us in the things that are within their mission, we don't have any problem calling on them.
Can you acknowledge then, do you see an issue here if you're saying that the police response was within...
Of course, that's the issue here. That's why we're standing here, to answer your questions about why so many people are on the streets with guns who are willing to use guns. And that's what we're all working together to solve.
Meet, though, there were ANC commissioners who said that they did reach out to police for assistance, and they were told there would be patrols, but that there was a block closed at least and lots of people there, but not any assigned officers. Can anyone speak to that?
Well, there are never assigned officers to a particular block. As you know, they are patrolling an area. Any other questions? Yes.
To that point, asking for specific police presence at a block party where there's 100 people, is that, so you're saying that's not something that you guys fulfill if somebody asks for presence?
For personal police protection on a block? Is that your question? There are ways there, and I'm gonna let MPD respond to that question about when we have assigned detail outside of a regular patrol.
So there's processes and ways that they can do that, and we're happy to get you that information, but there are reimbursable details. They can go through the proper channels to get the proper permits and such, but we're happy to give you more information after this if you'd like, but there are ways that people can request that.
But so if there are block parties where police presence is requested, that's something that they would have to pay for, you're saying?
I'm not saying somebody would pay for it. I'm saying there's ways to make that request, and then we would go from there.
So was there police presence? Was there police presence on Meade Street yesterday?
There was police presence all over the city yesterday, and the 6th District officers were patrolling. I was out there with them. I gave the briefing this morning at 2:30 on that case, so everybody was out there to include myself. And as I said, the Meade shooting happened in a split second. That shooting happened in a split second.
What was the response time?
That shooting, officers were on the scene within 1 to 3 minutes. I don't have the exact time in front of me, but they were there rather quickly. I don't have any knowledge of that.
Was there a go team in that general area of Meade?
I think that who knows
have
the
their
Ward
go-to?
7 locations. Yes, we'll get to your question.
There was not a GO team assigned to that area. The GO teams select areas based on MPD providing data about where historically there have been concentrations of violence breaking out. 28 GO teams covers a lot of neighborhoods. It does not cover every neighborhood. And so they were assigned to the areas of both the 6th and 7th district that MPD had prior data suggesting this would be helpful to have a non-police presence.
I have a question for the chief and for the mayor. Mayor, since you're stepping up.
Sure.
Michelle Ashton, the CEO of Digital Pioneers Academy, lost her 4th student to gun violence this school year alone. She spoke to reporters last week, and she said, this is someone who invested in educating children here in the District of Columbia, and said, I'm telling my parents, keep your kids engaged during the day, and at night, keep them inside because the city is not safe right now. And until we do something about it, keep your kids inside. How do you respond to someone who educates your children and is telling your parents to keep their kids inside because it's not safe?
That school has been through an incredible amount this year, and we want to make sure that they have every resource to serve families. That is including losing a teacher in California. They've been through a lot, and we want to make sure they have all the tools. We want to make sure that those kids, not just the victims, but their friends, know that we're doing everything to support young people and their families to keep them safe. And we think that, for the vast, I want to be real clear about something, Delia. For the vast majority of our kids, they're going about their lives and having a great time. But
The vast majority of parents in this city are still very concerned about their child's safety. So what do you have to say and what words?
well, that's what we've been talking about for the last several minutes. How we need to make sure that every part of our criminal justice system, but also you just mentioned another key part of keeping kids safe, and that's schools, and making sure that they have the counselors, that they have the mental health supports, and that parents are actually taking advantage of them. So if the parents of any one of their children come to them and say, I need help for my 12-year-old, that there is a solid answer for what they need to do. I think that we talked recently about my request to my team to come up with additional ways to help a family of a 12 or 13-year-old who needs help. And we get this a lot, where they kind of say to the police or they say to the school, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do to keep my child safe. And so we are going to continue to work for ways on the government side, but we've also asked the council to think about ways to keep young people safe who we know are in trouble. And we have not just the council, but the judges to say, let's put them in places, help us get them in places where they have structured rehabilitation and education. That hasn't happened. And that's what we need to happen. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Question. For the chief, I spoke to the acting chief yesterday, Acting Chief Smith yesterday, who said even though we are patrolling every sanctioned 4th of July event around the city, we will not lose our footprint on patrols in the community. Did MPD fulfill that mission?
Yes.
Despite the murders that we saw, the violence we saw last night?
MPD was at a full deployment yesterday. All of our officers, our officials, my colleagues you see behind me, we were all out there yesterday. MPD was out there yesterday. We were in community, and we covered all the major events downtown. And when the major events downtown ended, we shifted those resources back to community. So we were definitely in community yesterday.
In any resources, officers, we know there's a shortage.
Yeah. MPD was in community yesterday.
Yes.
The pandemic across the country, including D.C., we're seeing increases in violent crime, and some of those cities have managed to turn those trends recently and are seeing decreases. What makes D.C. different than them, and what do we need to be doing
I've already talked about what we need to be doing. I can't talk about other cities, but I can tell you that we have identified gaps, and we're pressing very hard on the government side, the legislative side, and the criminal justice side.
Can you talk also a little bit about our violence interrupters here? My understanding is a lot of the violence over the weekend was street conflict, and or at least some of it.
I don't think we can say that at this stage.
Well, can you talk about the deployment of our violence interrupters over the weekend, and if you feel like those programs are up and running as they should be?
I think that we continue to work on making sure we have a violence interruption program that is going to reap benefits and curb violence.
Do you feel like ours is doing that right now?
We have work to do.
And where are you on a new police chief and as well?
We're working on that. Well, we just buried our director, so give us a second.
So, Mayor, first off, did any of these events occur where you had your go teams? It's my understanding
Kevin,
they did
can
not.
you speak to that?
Yeah.
There were, I understand, 2 events. One took place in the Noma Sursum Corda area. The event took place actually as they were standing up their tent, so they hadn't actually activated yet, and they had to delay their activation by a couple of hours. And then there was one that was in an area within close proximity to the 28. Again, I understand there was one within close proximity to one of the 28, in addition to the one that occurred in the Noma Sursum Corda area as they were standing up. Again, let me highlight, they go to locations specifically based on prior data suggesting there's a history of gun violence, and they cannot prevent every incident, but it is very much all hands on deck for the violence interrupters. So they have some DC employees They have employees of the ONES program. They have contractors that work for both Cure the Streets and some of the ONES programs. So just as the folks behind me did all hands on deck, they did as well. Sometimes it does not cover or prevent every incident, though.
Find out where that other one was at some point.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll do it.
I have a quick question for the fire chief. I heard a lot of trucks running around last night. What was the situation as far as fires? Were fireworks causing fires, or what can you tell us?
So we had a lot of outside fires associated with the illegal use of fireworks. So that was a problem. We had 883 calls yesterday. It's one of our busiest days. Is the total responses for the day. About 100 more outside fires than normal.
Last week you met at the news conference. You said if you know somebody with illegal fireworks, call 311. And we were told that anything that pops, explodes. I said a joke. I mean, because nobody could control this. Do we just say it every year, or what?
So we actually, we're out enforcing that. We do have some enforcements. There was an arrest yesterday, I believe, for the illegal sale of firearms. It is a continuing problem, as you're witnessing over our shoulder here right now. Those are illegal. So.
There was a party and there were fireworks. You can see the bottle rockets, Roman cannon, whatever you call it, on the street, packs of things. So there were fireworks going on. Is this kind of going hand in hand as well? Whereas you have these different things where people are setting off fireworks and then we have some of the violent incidents, or is this completely unrelated?
So I think they're unrelated. People should be able to go out in their community and celebrate. They should be able to have barbecues. They should be able to be with their friends, and they should be safe. That's our expectation. I think. Yes, that's true. And yes, that's true. There is.
Last couple of questions, please.
Yes.
I have a kind of a big picture question.
Yes, ma'am.
You alluded to Harley Harper, who
Yes.
did amazing work in this community, well respected. I interviewed her at the ONES office when I profiled the Pathways program, hugely successful. The men who've graduated that program are desperate to reach out back into the community. Would you consider using the graduates of the Pathways program to do exactly that, to work either as violence interrupters or to work in the community?
I think they are. I don't know the number of graduates that are later employed by violence interruption, but a number of them are. I can tell you that, and they're certainly eligible to. But that's not the only thing that they're eligible for, and not the only way that they can contribute to their community. So we're very focused. We do regard the Pathways program as a stellar program that is doing job training, is doing behavioral health support, and is doing subsidized employment. And part of our commitment is to help people move on from that point to a sustaining job, and we continue to do that. But they are eligible, and many do go on to work for contractors who are providing violence interruption work. And I should say the earlier question was about when we will hire in ONES. I believe that position has been posted, and we need a special individual that knows how the government works, how to make the programs work, and has credibility in the community. So those who are interested in coming on for a very rewarding job, but not an easy one, we need you to contact us. Yes.
Mayor, for the question going back to the National Guard, and I have a separate question for police, but for you on the National Guard question, can you just explain for community members who are calling for the National Guard, why doesn't the staffing shortages, and again, I understand that the chief just said that police were in community, but the staffing shortages that are in place and the level of gun violence we've seen, why does that not constitute a request for the National Guard where police could be freed up and go and concentrate more resources in areas that are known to be problematic?
As I said, Stephanie, if we had a specific mission that was in the mission of the National Guard, we wouldn't hesitate to call on them. What the National Guard, they're not law enforcement, keep in mind. They don't know our local laws. They don't typically make local arrests. What we have used the National Guard for to perform a very critical public safety function has been in more traffic posts, and we use traffic posts very strategically. In the last couple of weeks, we have deployed in several neighborhoods. One of the MPD will give me some specifics on our activity, and we have been able to, we think, take some guns off the street as it relates to that. But National Guard don't typically do law enforcement.
Called in to handle other matters so that more police resources could be directed to neighborhoods in need.
As I said, if we feel the need to call them in for that type of mission and what's within their mission, given their level of readiness, we would do that.
There was a concern raised that your department may have been stopped because of the new Twitter policy and being able to put information out there publicly as needed. Can you confirm, is there anything to that, any concerns there with regard to the DC Police Department Twitter account?
Can we get back to you on that one? Thank you, everybody.